midday discourse on global television. I am Samuel Odi, and today with the numerous and the looming queues in petrol stations, we will be looking at the socio-economic impact of fuel scarcity in the federal capital and as well as the country at large. But before then, I'll bring you up to speed because the NPC has this to say regards to the queue and the challenges that they face and the reasons why there are so much queues in petrol stations. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, said the fuel queue seen in the Federal Capital Territory and some parts of the country is as a result of distribution of ship-to-ship transfer of premium motor spirits, PMS, also known as petrol, between mother vessel and daughter vessel resulting from recent thunderstorms. The company in a release statement says weather conditions have also affected breathing as jetting trucks slowed out of transportation of products to filling stations, causing a disruption in station supply logistics. The NNPC Limited also stated that due to the implementability of petrol products and in compliance with Nigerian Meteorological Agency's regulations, it was impossible to load petrol due to thunderstorms and lightning. The company noted adherence to the regulations is mandatory as any diversion could pose severe danger to trucks, filling stations, and human lives. It said the development was compounded by consequential flooding of truck routes, which constrained movements of PMS from coastal areas to the Federal Capital Territory. It assured it is working with relevant stakeholders to resolve the logistics challenges and restore seamless supply of petrol to affected areas. It said already loading has commenced in areas where those challenges have subsidized, and it hopes that the situation could continue to improve in the coming days and full normality would be restored. NNPC also called on motorists to avoid panic buying and hoarding of petroleum products. There's a report that would be coming from one of our reporters who got first-hand information and reaction from Nigerians on the challenges that's been facing since this incident started happening a few days ago. Do take a listen. When we come back, midday discuss continue.
By long queues and weary drivers, with pump price ranging between 710 naira and 800 naira in the Federal Capital Territory and other parts of the country. Following the current increase in pump price, individuals and commercial drivers lament over the loss of long productive hours wasted on queues trying to get fuel.
Make this government, Socio-Economic, make him look out of this thing when they do for get as it be. Sometime last year there was flood, that was the problem why we had fuel scarcity in Abuja. And then I'm sure that they saw the problem coming, but it could have been mitigated, but they didn't do anything about it. We shouldn't be having that kind of issue in this present time, this 2024. I still don't understand why there's scarcity. Now, as you can see, we queued here for hours now, and the so-called military and police people have been the one entering from the out gate, filling their tanks and leaving us here, which is very wrong.
Worried about the resultant effect of the scarcity, which will in the long run affect the price of food and cost of transportation, some persons are beckoning on the government to bring back subsidy.
This fuel subsidy, when they remove, when they return them back, the more fuel add, the more everything increase in Nigeria. There's nothing come down.
Yes, I've been here since 3 a.m. to queue. For me, the government should ensure that there's availability of fuel, even though it is increased, so that people can get it.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, which is the sole importer of petroleum, attributes the lingering fuel scarcity to adverse weather conditions, which has affected berthing of jetties, truck loads out, and transportation of products in filling stations, causing a disruption in station supply logistics. Reacting to the scarcity of fuel and the difficulties that follows, Nigerians are urging the federal government to take decisive measures to put an end to fuel scarcity in Nigeria. From Global Television News, I am Ogochukwu Mobino.
Yes, many thanks for staying with us. And you've heard the plea from Nigerians about the challenges that they've been facing. Some persons had to say they were on the queue since the early hours of 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and so on, depending on the time they got to the queue. And this has been challenging for a whole lot of Nigerians, and it has also had a negative impact on the socio-economic angle of the whole situation. So right now, it's about time for me to introduce my guest to you, who is a policy consultant, president of Emmanuel Ozo Emina. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So now, looking at this now, definitely the bedrock of most economies, it's by mobility and movement, business from one place to the other. So this fuel scarcity now has been posing a negative impact on the economy. That is one. But now, the NNPC now has come out to say they are now a limited liability company. Looking at regulatories, how do you think this is going to impact, and do you think they are going to do better now that they are coming out to say they are a limited liability company?
My first response would be, yesterday evening I decided to do some sort of on-the-spot checks in the central area and some parts of Abuja. I realized that valuable man hours are now spent at the fuel stations. People who, men and women who are supposed to be in their workplaces would abandon the workplaces. Those who were unable to show up in the workplace, who were unable to show up at the fuel stations during the day, sleep at the filling station, so they will be able to get fuel. So the implication is that productivity will be very, very low, because when you sleep at the fuel station overnight, you're not likely going to be at your top speed during the day. Then if you spend all the day at the fuel station instead of at the workplace, it means the work won't get done. So this is clear, practical example of the impact on the economy, the impact on social sectors and all that. So it's some sort of, it has huge impact. That's actually that's a fact.
Yeah. So now, how they've made references to the weather generally about thunderstorms, and there is no how they can transport products from the coastal area to the urban areas where all of this refined or where massive or major consumption of this fuel is being done. Don't you think the NNPC have come a very long way to be having hiccups like this during raining season?
I think if you ask me, I'll clearly say it's a lame excuse. Lame excuse in terms of, in the NNPC, you should have strategists, you should have logistics strategists, you should have distribution experts, you should have people who have done activities at the various value chain over time. There should be scenario analysis, clear, even consumption analysis. So I'm wondering, is the company set up today? Even if the company is set up today, they should have companies hire experts who would say, okay, in Abuja, this is the consumption rate within this season because of so and so. So over the next 3 months, over the next 2 months, by the next 2 weeks, we are making this, we're keeping it at so and so point. From there, we move it to the filling station. So for me, the entire excuse simply shows that the system is broken. So it's a very lame excuses.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at it now, they actually came out to say a whole lot, because they said private suppliers, private suppliers of petrol now are refusing, those marketers, are hoarding products because they projected that there will be a hike in the fuel, in electricity, in the fuel price. So now, do you think that's one of the reasons, or they are just trying to confuse Nigerians and just make us place our hands in different angles and not knowing what the root of the problem really is?
For me, they're actually not coming out with the real reason. Okay. Because the point is that what happens in information management is that when things happen, you could create a spin as a way of responding so that you could find a way around it. But I think it shows a broken system. It shows a system that is not top on its game. I mean, because in Abuja, over time, in the last 20, 30, 40 years, this is the consumption rate, and this is the growth rate in terms of growth in consumption in Lagos area, in Ibadan area, in Enugu area, in Port Harcourt. So I thought if you have a system that works, somebody somewhere whose responsibility is managing, coordinating these value chains or the networks should have been able to sit down. Even if you have an industrial labor issue, you find experts who will keep managing it, because each time you allow any part of the chain broken or weak, the entire system will be affected, and that's what is happening. So whether you are saying thunderstorm, don't you have weather experts who you have NIMET who would have coordinated with you and say, oh, let's share information. There should be that coordination. I mean, NIMET information, they usually make it public. So when you make it public, what alternative arrangements do institutions, organizations, whether public or private, do to ensure that you keep that value chain, that supply chain, that logistics management chain on? Because any delay in any of this system will affect the entire system. And that's where we are now. So it simply shows a broken system, I mean, that needs to be fixed.
We are still going to dwell a bit on this conversation, because looking at this now, they have been transporting PMX, petrol now, for years now via trucks. Wouldn't there be other means, so as not to be having, these challenges, other means of transporting the petrol?
Okay, let me tell you. I did speak on another forum some years ago about the British colonialists when they were here. They were more patriotic than Nigerians. Ask me, they needed to move produce from the hinterland to the ports, whether Eastern Port in Port Harcourt, or Western Port in Lagos. So between Sokoto, from Kanu, Sokoto, Katsina, down to Lagos, that route going through Bida, going through Kwara, going through down to Osogbo, down to Lagos. They created a rail track. On the other side, beginning from Maiduguri, Taraba, all down to Port Harcourt, passing through Makurdi, Enugu. So they knew they needed to move this produce down to Europe, down to United Kingdom, and they built a track. So I'm wondering, 63 years after independence, the successive government hadn't sat down and said, look, how do we create a transport network that delivers, that is not all on the highway? If you look at it, everything moves by the vehicle.
The major challenge, one of the major challenges that was actually pointed now, are actually issues of bad roads now. Bad roads, because it poured heavily, thunderstorm, and now the trucks drivers now can't even drive their trucks all the way to urban areas.
No, let me tell you, the safest way, if you ask me, even to move the petroleum product, should be by rail. If you move it by rail, what will happen is that the roads, the lifeline of the roads, are likely going to be extended. In fact, if you build a road, standard road, 25 to 30 years. But because you have heavy weight on the road,
heavy trucks,
you are moving cement, you're moving granite, you're moving petroleum products. If you move from Calabar, travel from Calabar, there's a depot in Calabar, down to Taraba, and see the state of the roads on Ekom, on Ogoja. I mean, it's all, each time I travel this route, I've traveled around Nigeria. My thinking is simply this. We have poor policy planning. I'm asking, is there nobody at top level who should sit down and say, let's map our road. Let's create alternative networks. Look at the rail and say, where do we have activities? Where do we need to move products from? Create that rail track, connecting towns and cities. And these things are not about rocket science. Europe have 26 countries, and the entire 26 countries are connected by rail, not magic. China do what they call Chinese New Year. Over 500 million people move around, travel within that season by rail. So sometimes I ask, you have people at the transport ministry, people at the marine ministry, all kinds of whatever. So when we create government agency, what do we create it for? Is it to deliver services? Is it to make services more efficient? So each time I sit down, I say, what are these agencies doing? So it means we have not prioritized properly, and that's why we are at this logjam. And I don't know the way out now. So what do we do when somebody says bad road, because the trailer is going to get down somewhere, because the roads are not bad. Take for instance, look at the ports, for instance, outside Lagos. You have about 7 ports. There are 2 ports in Delta. In fact, 3. Cocoa, you have Saple, and you have Warri. There are 2 in Port Harcourt. There's 1 at Oron. There's 1 in Calabar. But meanwhile, every cargo, it comes to Lagos. 68%, I'm quoting a data from National Inland Waterways Authority. 68% of the cargoes, the owners, the address is in Onitsha and Aba, but Southeast Nigeria. So between Lagos and Onitsha, it takes you almost a month to move 1 container, because they are going to get bad somewhere at Torre. They are going to get bad in Benin. They are going to get bad somewhere before Redeem Camp. So when you travel that route, you're going to see trailers that have been there for weeks carrying containers. So why don't you reactivate this ports, get them working between Warri to Onitsha? It won't take you more than a day or 2 from Onne or from Port Harcourt or from Calabar to Aba. So it's as if we are running a country that we have all decided won't work just because of decision-making processes. So as it affects other logistics, that's also how it's also affecting movement of petroleum products, and that's where we are.
Okay, we'll be going on a quick break, but before then, I would just ask, what policies, before you answer though, we'll go on a very quick break, but what policies do you think would need to be put in place for us not to be having this back and forth? Because this year alone, we've had series of, fuel scarcity and long queues in our petrol stations. But before we get deep into that conversation, let's go on a very quick break, and when we come back, Midday Discourse continues.
Hello, children. Gather around, let me tell you a story.
Do you know that stories have a way of captivating the minds of children, bringing fun and imagination to teach them morals? Join Sharona J as she takes you to explore the thrilling and exciting world of storytelling.
I'll be sharing with you our next interesting story.
Tune in every Saturday on Global Television, time 5:30 p.m.
Is the desk on Global Television.
Nigeria, come join Anthony Momodu on television's most compelling and facts-finding talk live show.
We are definitely. Can we not say that on them because
that this country gets it right?
Who are these bandits? It's the Dex on Global Television, where we analyze and dissect storming issues and commentaries in the world's biggest black nation, Nigeria.
Who is being held accountable for this money?
The eyes have it.
We stay and decide policies and reforms on the Dex. Tune in Mondays to Fridays, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Global Television. Let's stay on the Dex.
Global Morning.
Many thanks for staying with us, and we've been having a good conversation on socio-economic impact of fuel scarcity in the federal capital and also other angles or other parts of the country. But now, Mr. Ozemena, what policies do you think we should, the federal government now and the NNPC should put in place? So all of this back and forth would be happening, because I think this year alone, this is like the third time that we are having this fuel scarcity, and nothing is happening on the, the prices. The price is just, people are still buying at, some persons are buying at 615, some are buying at 670, and some filling stations are selling at 700. So this is, saying so much, telling so much negatively on Nigerians, that businesses, some small scale businesses are folding up because they can't keep up with, taxation and as well fueling to be able to continue. So what policy can be put in place for this, this whole back and forth with bad road and transportation should, itself?
I think we shouldn't say federal government and NNPC, because clearly NNPC is not the regulator. I'm sure you're aware. There's downstream regulatory agency and upstream regulatory agency. So sometimes when you think, you say, where are they? They haven't issued a statement. They are not talking. They are not acting. So sometimes you wonder whether they are just agency in name. I don't know, maybe perhaps I have not checked enough. I have not seen a statement by the downstream regulatory agency. Have you seen any? So what are they regulating? It simply shows they are not doing their job, because the law setting them up clearly says what they should do. They are the regulators. That's former DPR. And they are not there. You can't see them. So it simply means we have a broken system. Because if a regulator is not talking, NNPC, like you said, say we are a private agency, which by law and by design they are, even though I'm expecting that they should open up their books, because if you're a registered private company by government, it shows it's the people of Nigeria that own it. Citizens. So it should show us it's a public institution then. Because it's a public now that's actually suffering. No, the government is acting on behalf of Nigerians in terms of ownership, on behalf of the states, what you call Federal Ministry of Finance, Incorporated. These citizens of Nigeria, they are representing the state. So what I expect, my worry in the entire thing is that the regulatory agencies are not there, whether upstream, downstream. I've never seen any statement by them. When we had a petroleum pricing regulatory agency before now, you could see them intervening. So does it mean nobody regulates the filling stations who you say are hoarding? Because the law is clear on when you hoard such essential products. The law is clear, and nobody has activated anything. No filling station owner has been, booked for violation and asked pay a fine. So when you look at the entire thing, it's actually a sad situation. So what I think is, whichever agency of government that is supposed to act, that has a responsibility, that has a remit, please act. If you think there's fuel at the station and they are not selling, there are penalties for hoarding of products, more so essential products that drives the economy. For me, they should simply do what's right, what they should do. But at perhaps a long-term view, we should think about how do we truck the fuel from Apapa down to Meduguri. Must it be by road? Why don't we reactivate the Eastern rail line? Why don't we reactivate, ensure we put in full use the Western rail line from Lagos down to Daura? Let's look at this. You making mention of reactivating of the railways, right? Which I feel is actually going to be a good
suggestion and a good step in the right direction. But now, there are issues of insecurities now in most of these rural areas, and in those areas where this railway is cut across. So, we still have a massive issue of insecurity. Don't you think that will pose another challenge in terms of transporting this product?
No, but government has the capacity to police the country, to protect the integrity of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. They have the capacity. I mean, there are enough manpower, enough capacity in the room to protect every part of Nigeria. So for me, it's not an issue. Incidentally, the track are there. It's a question of reactivating them.
Yeah.
I mean, as children, some of us had traveled down from the east. You go to the north on rail. You move from the north to the south on rail. The British people actually were the people who did this over 120, 30 years ago. So we're not talking about reinventing the wheel. The things are there. But it's just because at a point it was abandoned. Nobody paid attention. But now we are realizing that the pressure on the road network, it's huge. And you need to have roads that should, be sustainable. Each road, any road that is less than 30 years, before you begin to talk about resurfacing, it shows that it's not properly built. Ask any engineer around there you meet.
Okay. Let's move away. Not totally though, but let's look at the fact that about food crisis now that we're facing in the country. Since the removal of fuel subsidy by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a whole lot of aspects have been declining, and then where it's been hit the most is in the aspect of food and the hike, the price, and all of that. So, Mr. President now has come out to say that they're giving 150 days for free importation of brown grains, that's food. Do you think this is a step in the right direction to curb hunger out of Nigeria?
Well, addressing what you call food insecurity, food and nutritional security in any country is a structural issue. It's more fundamental. The first thing to do is to say, where are we in terms of production? How many, Nigeria, I think the data available as at 2017, we consume 7.5 metric tons of rice per annum. The production in country, if you aggregate all the production by farmers in Nigeria, it's not more than 4 million metric tons.
That means we are low on production on what?
No, there's a deficit. So that deficit was actually what importation, bridges. But in 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari, I don't know who were the advisors at the Ministry of Agriculture who came up with the idea that if you close the border, it will increase local production. The answer is no. You know why? First of all, for you to increase your production, think about what are your production mechanisms. Is your agriculture mechanized? What level of mechanization do you have? Do you have improved seeds that can replicate over time? Because the major part of agricultural activity in Nigeria is still dominated by smallholder farmers. That's why you have about 69 to 70% of Nigerians involved in agriculture. But the question is that what do they produce?
Yes.
In the US, you have less than 6.3% of the population involved in agriculture. But the United States of America can feed half of the world, whether it's in grains, whatever it is. What is actually mechanization that changed the entire thing. Slaveholding in America was because they needed human labor to plant and to cultivate. The British government or empire came to Africa, picked people, dropped them in the Caribbean where they had their farm. United States was actually a farm for the British. Plantation all across Central and South America. But what has happened, what changed the entire thing was mechanization. Mechanization means now with less labor, human labor, you can plant. So how much of mechanization of agriculture do we have? That's number one. What is the tenure of land holding? Then what is the access to finance? What of access to the market? You have a whole lot of issues. So what I think the government has done, it's just palliative. Because when you say import, so to what extent does it solve the problem? Again, 150 days. You are going to go to Indonesia, India, China, Malaysia, perhaps Vietnam, to now go to a farm, a rice farm, get a rice dealer who now will have to travel around the country to aggregate, to fill a 30-feet container. And it takes time. First, you are going to look for LC, letters of credit from the bank here, which will take you about a month to arrange before you can now. For me, the time should be extended. That's number one. Number two is They didn't need to go to their villages to hold the
Receptions, yes.
So government is about delivering service. It's about service delivery. They didn't need to go and bring masquerade to dance and all that. So what I expect to do, what I expect to happen is, let's see the agricultural policy. How do we move from point A to point B? We consume 7.5 million metric tons. And by now, it would have increased because these are data as at 2017. So what has happened? So how much of the local the deficit have we been able to ramp up? And then, so we now know how many should be imported. So the entire thing is about, it's not about telling the leader what he wants to hear, but it's about clearly laying out the plan. Look, these are the key drivers, these are the actors, these are the steps we need to take to first tackle food insecurity and nutrition. This is the level we need to take to stabilize the economy, to stabilize the system, and what have you. So that's what I expect. Because it's about, if you don't have a structured program, if you don't have a timeline, if you don't have a work plan, you won't be able even to assess your results.
Okay, what does this mean now, this importation now? What does it mean to local farmers now at this point?
I don't think it poses any risk to the local farmer. Because what has happened in 8 years was that somebody somewhere at the policy level thinks if you close the borders, you will ramp up local production, but it didn't happen. So what happened was that on May 29th, 2015, I bought a bag of rice at Sahad in Abuja here at 7,500. The next few weeks, the thing went up. And by the time President Muhammadu Buhari was leaving in 8 years, it was almost 40,000. So the local production increased, the answer is no. But rather what has increased was that people were groaning under hunger. So the point is this, the thing is about data, and data speaks. So what data were those people who were advising, what data were they using? Because it's about data. And I mean, if you show me the data, then I can believe you. Show me the evidence. Because in production, in agriculture, it's something you see. If there's Gary in the market, you go to the market, if you say price of Gary has fallen, the question to ask is that, why did it fall? What are responsible? Is it that transport has come down, or is it harvest season, or is it there's a glut in the market and what have you? And moreover, there's even this idea of let's import. There's something. It started with you remember Joseph was in Egypt, and there was a dream by Pharaoh there was going to be hunger, and he developed what you call grain reserve, and that grain reserve was what kept Egypt during the period of famine.
Yeah.
So in modern days, they call it strategic grain reserve. If you have stocks in the strategic grain reserve, all you need to do is to release it during the harvest season. You buy up stocks from the market because there's a glut as a way of price stabilization system. So by the time, anytime there's food scarcity, you release it because it's all price management, price control mechanism, and then that stabilizes the price. But what we have not done, I'm not sure we've been very deliberate and intentional about any of this agricultural policy. Because it's a deliberate and intentional policy that will take us to the promised land.
Okay, do you think, you rightly mentioned that 150 days is not enough because, one, if we look at it now, we don't know where the importation will be coming from.
No, the importation are going to come from Southeast Asia.
Okay.
It's going to come from China. It's going to come from India. It's going to come from Indonesia, perhaps Bangladesh. Because Vietnam, these are the people who plant. And that's where the stock of these grains you have in Nigeria. Perhaps, Nigeria is not dependent on Ukraine. Ukraine is not our key supplier of wheat. Our wheat supply comes from America. It comes from the United States. So the point is that even the literatures on these issues are there. So what I expect the policy makers is to sit down, do brainstorming, do real work, do their work, and manage the system. Because that's their remit.
Okay. Moving away from, the food crisis now, let's come back to, the fuel subsidy and all. Like, most filling stations now, sell on obviously different amounts. And now the black market, looking at the black market now, they sell for I think 900 thereabouts. Do you think that the filling stations are hoarding?
Why did you get 900?
Like a liter for black market.
Go across, even within this central area. They're selling 1,000. Wow. On Saturday, I priced, they say 1,000.
So looking at this now, do you think that filling stations are hoarding so they can sell to these people and make more money?
No, what I think should happen is simply this. Regulatory agencies within the oil sector should do their work. There's a downstream sector regulatory agency. So what are they doing? They should do their work. They may not really bother about the price, assuming because you say you've deregulated, even though there's a price set. But
because
do your work.
Different filling stations sell different.
No, the argument is simply this. I read in one of the newspapers. They simply said the ex-depot price has increased. It used to be 630 naira or so, and they have increased it. So they're also doing their markup.
Okay.
So the entire thing is to say subsidy is gone. That's where we are. The entire thing is to say, we have deregulated, we have PIB and all that, or petroleum industry, PIA, Petroleum Industry Act and all that. But the point is simply this. The act did not envisage a confusion or chaos. The act simply say, look, let's have a regulation, a regulatory system. Let's have process work. Let the product be available to the people. Okay. Because the moment is not, like I've just talked about loss in productivity, loss in man hour. If your staff do not have fuel and he or she sleeps at the filling station, he comes to the next day and sleep in the office. It's not going to do anything.
That's a very valid point. But now, where do we go from here? Because lots of businesses now are actually, downstream decline, and the taxation of central bank and the tightening policy of the current economy to see how we can revamp our economy has been on a dire note. So where do we go from here now?
Well, the government knows what to do. During the campaign, each of the candidates that ran in the election say, I have a plan on how to revamp the economy. So what you do when you win is to activate that plan, is to work on that plan, is to monitor that plan, is to ensure that you walk the talk.
Yeah.
So that's what I expect. Because a government has been elected for over the next 4 years, and they have a responsibility to deliver on services. If you listen to the former immediate past British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, the guy say, I take responsibility. And that's what leadership is all about.
Yeah.
You take responsibility.
Yes.
For success, you take responsibility for failure, because you ask for the job.
Do you think that the renewed hope agenda now, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, has actually been, for the past 1 year now, looking at the scorecard, do you think that they have been doing most of the things that they promised to, provide for Nigerians?
No, it depends on who you listen to. Some Nigerians say they have done, depending on where they are coming from and how they feel about it. Assessing government is actually an emotional thing. Because if you think it favors you, you say, this is the best we've had. And if you think it doesn't favor you, say, well, I don't think they have delivered. So sometimes assessments of leadership, of governance, I mean, it's neither here nor there. But the point is simply this. There's something Matthew Kereku said some years ago. He said democracy is actually delivering services. He said for Africans, they eat rice, gari, they eat yam. And that's what leadership is all about. People want food on their table.
Yes.
And that's when they will say you have done your job.
Yes. But looking at this now, lots of persons can't even afford food now, because if you're going back to food crisis now, a plate that is the mudu of beans now is sold for around 3,500, which has been on a very high side. Now, due to the cost of insecurity and a whole lot of internal transportation
cost and other logistics.
So we have a whole lot of IDPs who are usually in the urban areas who can go back to farm now because of security challenges. So how can all of this now change? Is this food importation now going to curb hunger in the town?
No, I'm not sure it will. It will just, like I earlier said, simply palliative. I'm not sure it will solve anything.
But do you think this is the best approach, to be providing palliatives while the economy crumbles?
No, but I think perhaps what some analysts would call low-hanging fruits. But are they really low-hanging fruits? If you interrogate it, they may not really be low-hanging fruits. But I think in the first place, like I said, I would want to link it to the immediate past administration. I remember I have spoken to this on other platforms that, I mean, for several years, I said, look, show me the data why you must close the borders. It hasn't solved anything. But I remember one of the ministers saying that, look, in Kano, they are selling plate of rice for 100 naira. I remember one of the World Food Days, October 10th, World Food Day program. He was on the radio. I heard him say that in Kano, they are selling a plate of rice, 100 naira. So, but that's part of the result. So part of the food crisis we have now is a legacy issue. There's also a legacy issue to it. Shut down border for quite a long time. So the scarcity of the product hiked the price.
Yes.
Remember Jonathan last day, I told you I bought a bag of rice, 7,500.
Yes.
The next week, it moves from 12,000 to 15,000. And by the time President Buhari was leaving, it's about 40,000, 50,000.
Yes.
And now it's about 80,000.
Yes.
So you can see the trajectory.
Yes.
The farmer is not better. He hasn't made more money, because the fertilizer he used to buy, used to be 5,500. At the moment, the thing has gone, I think, if I'm correct, about 36 or 40,000.
40,000
per bag. That's for 50 kg. So the price of input, the price of labor, the price of, even if you're going to hire a tractor, because the tractor is going to pay more to buy gas. So there is an associate. That's why I said it's a structured problem. And it's only a structural approach that can solve it.
So what structural approach do you think the federal government now and stakeholders involved should, just dive into?
Very clear. Yeah. It's not rocket science. The first thing to do, identify the problem.
Yes.
So how much of food insecurity do we have?
Yeah.
What is the hunger rate? Because you can measure hunger. There's a matrix
yeah,
for measuring it. do people have enough nutrition? And what are the nutritional crops or products that people need to have access to? Then what are the stable crops? If somebody tells me, oh, the price of chocolate has gone down, who takes chocolate? Chocolate is a top level food.
Yeah.
In fact, I had a boss in one of the donor programs I worked for, who told me that politicians usually across the world, more especially in developing countries, play what they call politics of rice. The politics of rice is this: the people who consume rice are actually the urban poor. The lower people who provide services, who live in the urban areas, who do not have cooks, who don't have stewards who cook every day for them. So rice is the easiest staple food among poor people who live in the urban areas. So during an election, they will buy rice and distribute. If you watch around, what politicians distribute is bags of rice.
And beans. Yes.
But the moment they win, they will now come hard on importation of rice. It happened in India. It happened in a lot of countries across the world. In fact, I read a literature on politics of rice. I think somewhere one of the dons in University of Ilorin, Faculty of Agriculture, is on the internet. You can check it. The politics of rice, because rice is a commodity that has been politicized because they know that's the key staple food. So identify staple foods and then find out how do you ramp up on local production. If you have deficit, how do you mitigate it with imports? And then what are the importation policies? What are the local access to credit? I mean, now the interest rate is 38.2%. So it's not, you can't take such a money and set up a poultry. Can't take such a money and set up a farm. How long does it take even to process a credit to farm? If you apply farming season, you need to plan by January. You have identified the farmland. If you are in the south, between February and March, you should have been looking at land clearing. Because by April, the next month, April, May, the rains are in full force, and your crop need to be on the ground. So if you apply for credit in December or in October of the previous year, and by March, and by April, by June, they have not approved your credit, that money is not meant for that season. It has to wait for the other season. So how easy is it to access? Well, most of the times, you are likely going to find we have empowered XYZ farmers. Ask where are the farms located. So government need to be intentional. They just need to be intentional about farm, because the point is that you can't play with food. The moment you play with it, if you say I planted 13 hectares of land, show us where are the produce.
True. Mr. Emmanuel Ozemena, thank you so much for joining us on today's edition, and that's how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Midday Discourse. I'll see you all tomorrow, and I will be getting deep on other interesting conversation that affects the general public. My name is Samuel Lodi. I will see you tomorrow. Good afternoon.